because the cross is also symbolic of, north, south, east, and west. And who's in the middle of that? Always you are, right? So it's interesting. You get to still have your point of view, but it's no longer like a pressure imploding feeling of lostness. It's more of a kind of a fountain of appreciation that can come out of it. And when I found the Gene Keys, I didn't know that that's what it was about yet, but I knew it was speaking to me. And I kind of went back and forth with it over 3 months. And then I found human design and made a connection. Oh, this is what the Gene Keys are largely coming out of. And I started to have really powerful experiences with alignment and energy coming into me, and understanding my own incarnation cross, and lots of synchronicities kind of like that. I mean, I already work with synchronicities quite a bit. It kind of guides my work in a large way. So this was just another huge synchronicity. And then I'm like, oh well, I'm going to have to pour my whole life into this now, because I'd already been working on other things, and I kind of had to abandon certain parts of my website that I was working on that aren't finished yet. I can't bring myself to go back to them because I'm so busy with this human design thing.
So you're pretty much self-taught, like with the human design thing. You didn't go to like the official classes and.
I've taken. Well, I did a deep dive with Gene Keys. That was in 2011 or 2012, and that was cool. A lot of Gene Keys teachers came together, and they would take you through certain modules, right? Of we're going to look at this and then focus on that Gene Key and what it means, and then we'll focus on this the next week. And I think it was like 4 weeks long. And we would have private sessions, group sessions, and it was a really cool idea. They'd already done it 3 times, I think, 2 or 3 times, and the 3rd time was the last time, I think. So I was glad I got to catch it. So I have had one Gene Keys session, one deep dive, and I haven't really had a professional quote unquote human design reading, because it's kind of a strange thing. I've already, there's a lot available online. There used to be more, actually.
Yes, I saw you deleted some of your videos.
Yeah. Some of them, yeah. There was an ABC course that was available, and a cartography course that was available online for free. And it had so much information. This is before the Science of Differentiation book came out. And it was such a good resource to if you wanted to be serious about learning the system, to go from beginning to end, instead of just skipping ahead to your channel or your profile, which is what people do in the beginning. They want to know about their profile, their channel. And after doing that for a few months and maybe looking at your family and your friends, it's like, for me anyway, it was like, okay, time to go to the very beginning and slowly get through all of this. And I did it. And that taught me a lot. And I always shared those links. But over the past 3 years, they got taken down. They're dead links now. So it's kind of difficult to find a real comprehensive course like that online. You could get the Science of Differentiation book.
Yeah, I noticed there are so many sources, but they're so repetitive, even word to word, like same phrasing. It's like the same. You hear many people parroting the same thing. It's annoying. That's why I like looking at your YouTube channel, because you have a more unique perspective and you seem to filter it in your own way. So it shows that you spend a lot of time thinking about it. So.
Yeah. My mind already kind of works like that. Like, I love, even before I started talking about human design, I was making videos looking at symbolism, because I used to have another channel before this YouTube channel, and I did an 1.5-hour video just looking at Babylon and the Beast, or the Whore of Babylon symbolism, where she's riding the 7-headed beast and she's holding a grail, and what that is about astrologically, the 7 planets, and then you have this feminine consciousness, which you could call corresponds to Bina on the Tree of Life, the no thing in particular, but that is the cradle for everything, the Whore of Babylon, quote unquote. And talking about that with all these slides and everything, I ended up deleting that video too. Because this was a long time ago when I was just trying to get confident in myself, like I know I can do it. Sometimes I'd be like, I don't like it, delete it. But I eventually came into my confidence. But I've always loved being able to tell stories about symbolism. I'd already been giving tarot readings for so long. And when I found human design, it's like, whoa, now this is a real story. And it's starting to connect it to so many other things. Because it's a really powerful revelation that Ra received.
Dick on a stick, bitch.
Slice and dice. In human design lingo, it's moving from leftness into rightness, which is a fascinating thing all by itself. The different levels of that. You can think about it like left brain and right brain. But we don't just have left brain, right brain. We have left being and right being. So you could say we're moving more into right being, which is more connected to the no thing in particular, right? Our leftness that we've been in for so long, like many thousands of years, that leftness is really concentrated, and you could say it has a lot of security issues. It needs to, and this is where a lot of our ego complexes have come out of, because we need to feel really secure, and it's really linear too. Like all our sense of time, we are very time-based beings. You know, it's all like with our calendars and our watches and everything. That's all quite left, and it's so fascinating to me how I would talk about we're moving from leftness into rightness and how this is mapped out on the body graph and everything. Yeah, that's been a huge preoccupation for me. Like not only talking about it, but experiencing it myself. Moving into different states that seem to be in alignment with the ongoing revelation of it. Because I don't think it was just Ra. In his revelation, Richard Rudd was having his revelations. So many people are having revelations these days. It's like, that's why, the revelations in the Bible, it's like, we're in the time of revelations, right? Or apocalypse, which basically means removing of a covering, like it's a revealing, right? So there's so many revelations and revealings that so many people are having that don't even know anything about human design.
Exactly.
And I think they're all valid, and I think there is something to be said for all the different ways people are seeing, like say for example, with evolutionary astrology that came to Jeff Green. That's a powerful form of astrology that I utilize in my reading sometimes, and that's a very valid revelation that took place that focuses on Pluto placements and the nodal placements and certain other configurations, and seeing how this evolutionary astrology, it's fascinating because it kind of is in alignment with human design as well. Evolutionary astrology is about moving from unconscious evolution, where we've been for so long, like we're just kind of blindly evolving into something, moving from unconscious evolution, where we're just kind of being pushed around by the forces, into conscious evolution, where you do have a choice. You can align with your evolution, you can align with your north node, you can align with the polarity point of your Pluto consciously, and that will help you evolve rather than experiencing some kind of catastrophe, which is something that can happen quite often with Pluto if you're not aware of what's coming, what's happening. You're still trying to hold on.
It's such a powerful ego basher.
That's what I'm experieing. Pluto's transiting my south node right now.
Oh, wonderful.
In the
So
first
a lot
house.
of letting go. Oh my God, about you.
Yeah.
Go your old stuff. Well, Pluto is transiting my third, so.
Oh, nice. Is it crossing any planets or?
No. I don't have any planets in my third, but I think it's trining my sun. It's been trining my sun for a while.
Okay.
So.
There's a harmony there.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wanted to get back a little to human design, because I think most of the viewers of this channel are really at a very beginner level about the information about the human design. And if you don't mind, I'm going to share a random chart, and you can tell what are all the lines.
Yeah. Yeah. The channel.
Yes. 1 second.
With human design, we have these centers, and of course, each one of these centers corresponds to a different way of being. And what's different about these centers from the normal Hindu chakra system is that there's two extra centers, which is the G center, that yellow diamond in the middle, and the spleen, which is that triangle on the left,
Yes.
the far left. These are the two extra centers. All the rest of them, the root, sacral, solar plexus, heart, throat, ajna, and head, those are the 7 traditional centers. But the addition of the G center and the spleen is actually a fascinating one. And it creates a fascinatingly complete system. It really is comprehensive. I know to some people it can just look like a mess because there's so much going on here. But when you understand how to interpret it, it's really a powerful thing. Part of the revelation, it combines the four ancient mystical systems of Kabbalah, the Hindu chakra system, the I Ching, and Western astrology. And when you bring all of those together, it kind of goes click, and there's something so perfect about it and uncanny that you just have to be like, the way it works is the I Ching, the codon wheel of the I Ching that some people might have seen, the wheel with all the hexagrams around it. Imagine putting that wheel around the zodiac itself, with the 10th hexagram at the top, right at the beginning of Capricorn. The 10th hexagram kind of straddles Capricorn.
Like the house.
Right. Then at the bottom you have the 15th hexagram, and they're all situated. So say, if you look at Ernst's sun placement on the personality side,
okay,
that's within the 17th hexagram, but it's within the 6th line of the 17th hexagram in Aries, I think. 17 is in Aries.
Yes.
And that's why it's 17.6, because it's within the 6th line of the 17th hexagram. So when you see the number after the point, that number can only go to 6. It's not going to be like ever 17.8, because the point is the 6 lines. And that's the calculation right when he was born, right when there was a separation of space between
the personality.
Right, the personality. Then you have the design calculation, which is exactly 88 degrees before that. And the reason it's 88 degrees rather than 90 degrees, perfect 90 degrees, is a lot of things with this. It's hard to say why. And it's like that. It's like that with astrology too, I think. But people know how it works. They just don't know why it works. And if you keep asking why, you'll drive yourself crazy at a certain point. But all we do know it works. So, and that's the same thing with Ra getting this knowledge. Why is it 88 degrees? Well, it adds a certain continuity with profile and things like that. As you can see, the personality sun Earth has a 6th line expression, which is a big part of the experience. And then the design side has a 2nd line expression. So you could say he has a 6-2 profile, a 6th line personality, and a 2nd line unconscious, because the design 88 degrees before you're born has a lot to do with the unconscious body consciousness. It has a lot of momentum behind it. It doesn't need to think about things in the way we think about things. It's already kind of moving. which is a powerful aspect to understand about human design. When you look at your design placements, other people might notice those things about you more than you notice them about you.
Yes.
Because the fact that your personality is in it, it's like a fish in water. You know, if you ask a fish what it's like in water, they're just going to be like, what water? What is when you're in your design placements, you know how it is. If you've ever seen, you've probably seen lots of video of yourself. But if somebody's never seen a video of themselves and they've never heard a recording of themselves speaking, and suddenly they're seeing it, they're like, oh my God, that's how I look.
That's not my voice.
That's not me. It doesn't sound like that in my head. But that's kind of like what your design placements are like to everyone else, because they get to be outside of you and look at you and notice certain behaviors, certain proclivities, certain characteristics that you have that it's difficult for you to see because you're not kind of consciously operating from that place all the time. People are predominantly operating consciously from the personality placements because it's so on the surface, it's so readily identify with. The design placements are more like how you look, how you behave with your body, what people can see about you on that level, which is a fascinating thing because that really has a lot to do with the unconscious and things you might not be fully conscious about, which is why it's so good to be around other people. And, some people might tell you things about yourself. You're like, really? Am I really like that? If you find human design, come to find out, yeah, you really are like that. Like if you look at the design placement over here with the design center, the 38.2 and the 39.2, other people might notice those things about Ernst more than he noticed that about himself. What human design does is it can help show you what those are, and you can more easily align with it. It's a real fascinating thing, especially when you come at it from the angle of the gene keys again, like being able to look deeply into each hexagram concerning the cross and balancing that cross, going from it being a painful, the saying everybody has their cross to bear. That's really the case with your incarnation cross. But when you understand really how it's working with the gene keys, he looks at the shadows of each of the hexagrams. Then he looks at the gift of each of them, and then the siddhi, which is Sanskrit for divine gift. And you could say the gene keys is like a kind of shadow work. You have to understand the shadows first before you can release the gift within it, because it's the same frequency. It's just like with astrology, how you have negative aspects of Scorpio and positive aspects of Scorpio, or negative aspects of Aries and positive aspects of Aries. But in an interesting way, say like with Aries, with the arrogance, there's a gift in that arrogance. Even though it can be expressed in a negative way, there's also a gift in it. And it's just like with these hexagrams. There is some possible negative stuff, like with the 17 on his personality side, and the 8. The shadows of the 17 and the 18 are intellect and judgment. Now you might think, how is intellect a shadow? Well, intellect is different than intelligence. People can be really intellectual. Actually, the shadow of the 17 is opinion. The opposite side of the channel of the 1762, which you can see between the ajna and the throat. I know there's a lot of pieces and parts to this knowledge, because for me it's like a second language. I can just drop in things. But the channel of the 1762, the 62 has the shadow of intellect. The 17 has the shadow of opinion. And Richard deals a lot with that in each gene key. He talks about the shadow for 2 or 3 pages and what that shadow may be like for the person who has their sun or their earth placement within that particular gene key. And it is highly accurate. Go ahead.
Can I ask, what are these little triangles and this star here?
Okay. Those have to do with exalted and detriment.
Okay.
And
so I see the nodes also have an exaltation and detriment, because in the type of astrology that I use, they don't have exaltation and detriment.
Yeah, I don't use them either, even though I'm most familiar with Western astrology. I don't really pay attention to exaltations and detriments because it seems kind of limiting to tell someone, well, that's bad. It's just kind of a label saying, that's bad. Well, it's like, well, what else about it? We can start from so many different angles rather than saying, that's bad, or this is not good, this is a difficult thing. It's like, well, maybe it's a gift, maybe it's... And I just kind of started...
Something that they need to work on.
And this is part of the original revelation Ra God, the exalted and detriments with the hexagrams and the planets. Because when he received this knowledge, he was up for 8 days, 8 days straight, receiving not just human design, but having all kinds of wild experiences. It's a pretty wild story, actually, that connects to a lot of things.
But I was curious, speaking of Ra, that you say in a video that, speaking of the 4 types, the 4 general types, manifestor, generator, projector, and reflector, that he only started talking about these 4 types 10 years after he got the revelation. Right. If I understand correctly. So why do you think that is?
Well, he had to unpack it just like everybody else, and he admits in certain talks that other people were helping him unpack it, even people who were learned astrologers. He was learning a lot from what's that famous astrologer woman's name? Green. What's her first name? Something Green. Anyway, she's kind of a famous astrologer and has written many books on it. And Ra would say, I would be more interested in reading her books on astrology than I would be about reading about people's interpretations of planets with human design.
Yes.
So he would admit, this is a combination of influences. So taking everything he could from astrology and kind of working it into the meanings of human design to help paint a picture and unpacking it over years, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work. And that took a while until he got to a place where he's like, there's a lot of interest in it, and in a way, he didn't want it to scare people with the complexity of it, because it is kind of complex. And he wanted to make it as simple as humanly possible. There's positive things about that, and there's negative things about that. because it can be oversimplified. And that's one of the concerns I have with it, where when things are overly simplified and people are running around saying, I'm a 5-1 manifesting generator with this and that. And it still doesn't tell me much about you. It's sort of like if somebody were to sign every letter they wrote with, I'm a Capricorn with a Pisces moon.
Yeah, so what?
It's like, okay, there's so much more. What houses are they in? What are your nodes? There's so much more going on with all of that. And it's the same thing with human design. There's so much detail to pay attention to, but it's accurate. It's accurate, highly accurate detail.
Yes, but there are some people who feel like limited by these 4 main categories. Like, how do you start when you look at a chart? Do you look at these personality traits, or do you look at their type? If they're a generator, manifestor, etc. Because some people are like, oh, I'm a generator, so I can't lead. I'm a manifestor, so I have to do this. Like, it's so easy to limit yourself, just like with astrology. Like, I should be like this if I have this.
Right.
I think it's dangerous when astrology or human design or any such science becomes like a limiting factor.
Yeah, that definitely can happen. I mean, it happened thousands of years ago too. Say there was a download of knowledge that just came, like maybe 3,000 years ago, somebody had a revelation about Kabbalah or the Hebrew language and how it was structured esoterically. And it's a very fascinating story, even that one. And it's actually connected to human design too. I'm working on a video showing how they're more deeply connected. But say that revelation happened and somebody is like trying to teach it, but then the next thing you know, other people are interpreting it in a wild way. And the next thing you know, cults are popping up here and there and like really terrible about the revelation. So that's kind of what happened 2,000 years ago when they started burning libraries, and like the Library of Alexandria. And it was more than just that library. There was like a campaign to destroy all knowledge in Egypt and elsewhere. And so what people did is they had to hide everything because these crazy cults were taking over. So they had to make it a cult and hide it. But we're at a time now where it's like, we don't have to do that. Everything is kind of taking place online.
Yes.
There are no wars over human design. We're not going to go kill a bunch of people because we believe in the best form of human design. So that's good that's not happening. But it is still kind of a battle going on, even within human design itself. There's like inward struggle. People are trying to figure out what's going on with who to trust and who's giving the right courses, or and all things like that. So that's why I decided to like kind of pull into myself and teach it how I teach it. Of course, I do still use the word generator, manifestor, projector, because they're useful terms. They are kind of useful. I just don't hammer on them, and I don't hammer on things like strategy and authority. I don't tell people right away that they're not self, and I don't even use that word when I'm giving sessions with people.
It's so harsh to hear that you're not self. Like
exactly. I never even bring it up with people. What I talk about is energy dynamics, and I give them the most benefit of the doubt. Like I don't know, like who am I to assume that they are somehow less evolved than me just because I've been into human design for 8 years or something like that. There's so much out there in terms of psychological breakthroughs that have happened in the last 100 years, and so many revelations. Like I said, that human design is a powerful part of it, but it's not the only part. So I like combining them, like in my Circuitry and Beyond video.
Yes, that's a very thorough video.
It took me like a year and a half to piece all that together because I'm looking at not only human design, but astrology,
cards,
tarot cards, a little bit of Hebrew to help understand some mystical things, philosophy, some aspects of psychology, you could say, and seeing how human design works in the big picture, not the little tiny narrow picture of you got to join my human design cult, otherwise you're not self. I don't like talking to people like that. I want this knowledge to be opened up for as many people as possible, and it's so new that it's going to require some work. I mean, I'm doing the best I can as a single person to work with it in the way I can.
Just come back a little to this. So the auras, the chakras, that are not colored, they are open, and the ones that are colored are consistent. So defined. So they're more consistent. So it's usually said that it's not so good to have them open because then you follow other people and they influence you in the manifestation of these. How do you see that?
When you look at defined centers, they are more consistent. It's what you wake up with in the morning and go to bed with at night. It's always there, and that means that it gets a lot of practice every day. It's like you're practicing your definitions, and you get really good at it over time. Like I have the 1156 between the ajna and the throat, and that's a storytelling channel. And people with that channel usually have good speaking voices and can move through concepts and just kind of have fun with telling stories about this, that, or the other thing. And you could say that I didn't, with all my genius or whatever, just like do this through a bunch of hard work, and I had to teach myself how to do this or have this talent. It's just there, and it's been practicing itself my whole life. I don't have to touch it. And the thing with conditioning that can happen is if you have an open center or an undefined center. Technically, it's open if it's totally open. Like Ernst here has an open throat.
Yes.
So because there is no definition in it, there's no active gates. But in his ajna, even though it's undefined, he has a couple gates in it. So you would call that undefined. You wouldn't call it open. But that's just like a human design thing that you might read in human design literature. So, but I don't get too caught up in being so strict with that. I just figured I'd throw it out there. So if you have an undefined center, that's sort of like I talk about in terms of an empty bucket. If you have an empty bucket and somebody walks up to it with a definition that you don't have, it's kind of like a voice in an empty bucket, how it creates a reverberation. It goes, woo, and you can hear it like, it's even louder, it amplifies. And that's the kind of thing that happens with an undefined center. It's an amplification that takes place when somebody who has definition there suddenly comes into your aura. It's like, and you can feel it really powerfully. You know, say somebody has a defined head center and a defined ajna, and you don't, and suddenly they're in your aura. You might be feeling their reverberations of their thought processes quite a bit, and you can go on quite a trip with them. But where conditioning takes place is where you think you're missing something, or maybe I should try to be like this person. That kind of thing can happen with emulation. You know, there's nothing wrong with, like, people do this all the time when they're a teenager. They hang posters of their favorite bands on their walls, and they have their favorite movie stars or something because they really like their characteristics or how they talk or how they look or their creative process. But emulation is okay when it's like a role model kind of thing. But when you start to think that there's something wrong with you because you don't have necessarily what another person has, that's where conditioning can come in with things like human design. You know, say for example, Ernst has these channels between the G center and the spleen and the sacral. Now that's a really powerful definition there. That really kind of locks him into his experience. It makes him very secure feeling. He has a lot of direction. He has a lot of passion with his own behavior and creativity. Loving what you create and creating what you love, and having a lot of juice for work with the 3457 channel between the spleen and the sacral. People with that channel have so much juice for work. They could juggle all kinds of work and just keep going.
He's just like that. He's just relentless.
Yeah, people with that channel are. Like I talk about in my circuitry video, Frank Zappa had that channel, and he was relentless. He was not stopping. He would drive people so hard. That's just one story in that short video I showed. You know, he'd be up for 2 or 3 days working, and all these musicians around him were like, Frank, I need to sleep for 5 hours. Yeah. He's like, no, you'll be back here in 3 hours. And he's still pumping away, you know, when they get back. And he was like that for many years, you know, because he was so passionate about what he was doing. So you could say Ernst has a few of the same things Frank had with the 1057 between the G center and the spleen. That center is very much concerned with its creative behavior and its sense of creativity and doing the work for the joy of the work itself. It's a really fun.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Does it matter if it's red if it's the design, or black, the personality, or intertwined? Like, how does that affect it?
You could say that the 57 is something like it's got more momentum that he doesn't have to really think about so much. It's not going to be something that's so much consciously being apprehended all the time. But when you look at the 10, what does he have in his 10? That's where his moon is. So his moon placement is in Capricorn, 10.4, right at the beginning of Capricorn. And the second hexagram is Mars, which is in Taurus.
Mars and Saturn in Taurus.
So you could say those are really conscious aspects of himself. But when you look at the 14 in the sacral with his design Neptune, and the 57 in the spleen with his design moon, those are more, it doesn't mean that he cannot apprehend them ever. You know, we have this whole thing with the Jungian psychology about making the unconscious conscious, right? You could sort of look at it like that with the design placements. When you're aware of them and you realize it's just going, then you can let go of the oars, so to speak, of the boat and stop trying to paddle against the current and just kind of let it go and get rid of resistance in life, because that's really what it's all about, whether you're looking at
Honestly, I thought that he would be a manifester, like the way he behaves and the way I know him. And when I saw he was a generator, I was really surprised, because I'm very, very new at human design. So I thought, okay, like he's like sort of a leader, a pioneer. So I thought, but then,
well, there's a lot of things going on with that. Like you thought he would be a manifester, right?
Yeah, yes.
But you look at his body graph; he has a totally undefined throat. And the thing about manifestors is that they have a motor getting to the throat. The 4 motors in human design are the root, the brown square at the very bottom, the sacral, which is one above that, the solar plexus on the far right, and the heart center, that little triangle. So those are the 4 motors. The reason they're called motors is that there's a lot of dynamic energy within them. You wouldn't say the spleen is a motor, because the spleen has, well, we can get into a lot about that. Most of the gates of the spleen are in Libra, and they have the lower trigram of wind. So it's kind of like more of an intuitive thing with the spleen. It's very light. It's not like a generative dynamic energy that's coming out. So these other centers, these 4 motors, if you have one of those getting to the throat, which is about manifestation and expression, then there's an impetus within these people to express a lot and to get a lot out into the world. And they're always moving. They're always doing something. A key word for manifestors is doing. But that doesn't mean that people who don't have a motor getting to the throat, it doesn't mean they can't do or that they're not doing or anything like that. Like if you look at Ernst here, he just has a lot of energy for work, and he enjoys his own creations and being creative, like with the 1057. You know, the 214 is empowering direction in others. You know, that's what that channel does. He might be empowering direction, change of direction in people's lives just by standing next to them.
Yes, a very strong personality.
That's something that happens. But the thing, you can sort of tell when you get further into it, you might meet a manifestor, and you get to know manifestors. There is something about their aura that it can be quite repelling.
I'm a manifestor.
Oh, you are? Oh, wow. But I'm about to say, of course, I have to always say this, like, it's not a bad thing. It's not.
It's fine.
It doesn't mean you get rid of, like, you have to push everybody out of the way, but there is something about it, like, there are certain things that you bring up to a manifestor that they're like, that's exactly what it was like when I was young. Say, manifestor child just wants to go and do what they wanted to do in the moment they want to do it, and they get in trouble for it because they're not informing. Like there's a thing about manifestors where just to help everybody else around them, to inform people of what you're doing, because people always want to know what a manifestor is up to, because their aura just has this thing about doing. They'll just leave without telling people where they're going, what they're doing.
Yes.
Yeah, if you're right, you have this energy getting to the throat. It's very spontaneous. There's this impetus to act right now. So why would you have to tell people about something that's already so naturally just like, just take off and go to the store?
Yes, well, it's not like you're doing something bad. Like you said, just take off and go to the store or something, but people are like, why? Why didn't you tell me? Well, I don't know.
People are obsessed. I call it, what's the manifestor doing condition?
Exactly.
When they just take off, you're just like, what? It's like they just disappeared. And it's the worst for parents when you have a manifestor child and they're like 6 years old, they decide to just open up the door and go walk through town alone. And, they come back and the mother's like, where are you? Yeah. I'm a manifestor. I'm allowed to just do whatever I want. The key words being do whatever I want. People with an undefined throat, it's not like, say, for example, Ernst, it's just a different kind of dynamic. It can seem subtle sometimes, but he has a really powerful body graph. And he is manifesting a lot, right? Even though he has an undefined throat. This is where human design can be dangerous because, say, the throat is all about manifestation and expression. Then I've seen this actually happen. People told me this. Even people who are certified are telling people weird stuff like this. Oh, you have a totally open throat. That means you don't manifest things.
Yeah, you shouldn't. That's so horrible to tell somebody, like, especially when they're younger, like, you shouldn't do this.
Right. Or the fact that he has an undefined ajna, telling him that all his thoughts are meaningless. You have an undefined ajna. That means all your thoughts are random and meaningless, and nothing really concrete can come through that's meaningful. That is so bad, and it's bothered me for years that this kind of thing is being taught, even by certified practitioners. Like this kind of thing. This is why I'm like, okay, something is wrong with how this is being taught and how people are being indoctrinated with it. You kind of need. It's almost like you got to have a little bit of a discernment.
Yes. So normally the generator strategy would be to respond, so they have to wait to be invited to do something. Right.
Yeah, like you have to wait forever. It's like the response thing is a real thing. When you wait to respond to what feels good, everything is usually great. And I did a generator video where I talked about, if you have a defined sacral, it radiates and it also attracts. So it's kind of like two things at the same time. I sort of brought this up in the circuitry video. It radiates and attracts at the same time. But what makes generators frustrated is they don't know what's going and what's coming. They don't know what to do with their energy. And it can be difficult to be patient in understanding the power of your sacral. Like, things are coming to you, right? Things are coming to you, and you will be able to respond to the right thing when it does come. And it's attracted to you. And then you'll have enough energy for it. You'll have certainty with your energy. You'll know what you're doing. You'll be able to jump right into it when you're in alignment. And that's what it's like with everybody. It's not just when you're in alignment, suddenly you have all the energy you need. Suddenly everything's great. But I've had experiences where even though everything might be up in my head and I might want to create a page about something, even though I know it all and I could start it, for some reason the energy just isn't there yet. So I have to wait. And sometimes I've even tried to force myself just to do it. But for some reason it won't happen. It just will not come out of my fingers.
So it's not responding to other people, but more to yourself.
Right. And there could be a lot in terms of transits taking place.
Yes.
I think there's a lot going on in terms of guides, what would be best for you. And your guides know that. Like, even though you can't hear them all the time, this is why faith is important, and having faith in a higher power and stuff like that. Like, just because everything's not happening right now, you know that there's a part of you or a part of the universe that does have your best interests at heart. And if you have enough faith, like, this thing you're pushing so hard for right now, in 3 months, it's going to be perfect. It's going to be perfect in 3 months if you can wait and have faith and just keep doing what you're doing and just be as patient as you can. And this is kind of like a generator thing. We don't need to manifest everything right now. We can be patient with our passions and just kind of work your craft or doing whatever. But again, I don't like pigeonholing too much because then that sounds like if you don't have a defined sacral, that means you can't be passionate. You shouldn't be working on anything you're passionate about. No, what it has to do with is if you have an undefined sacral, the consistency is different.
Yes.
You might overwork yourself. It's very possible for somebody with an undefined sacral to overwork themselves. Because just like I said with open centers, when somebody comes into your aura and they have something that you don't have, it reverberates and amplifies. People with undefined sacrals, they're like really by all the generators in the world. There's so many of them. And when they're around them, it's just like and they figure, wow, the fact that it's amplified, they figure they can just go swinging through the jungle like Tarzan, and they can in many cases. But sometimes they can take it too far and it can lead to burnout. But I've seen some projectors who are really hardworking and they don't end up destroying themselves, like Jackie Chan, for example. He does all his own stunts. He's an amazing martial artist. He's done all these movies, and he's a projector. And I don't see him falling apart. He's doing great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he does have a projector thing about the way he breakdances through all this stuff, and he's really precise and really focused. It's an interesting thing.
I was curious that charts that have like 5 or 6 defined centers are more powerful because they're more consistent. Or not necessarily.
Yeah, that's another thing with language. More and less.
Yes.
I've seen people with charts that have every single center defined.
Wow.
And they are really full of themselves. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It just it's different. You know, they don't need people in the same way other people might need people in order to learn something new or to experience something new. They could their experience with others is on a different frequency. You know, it doesn't mean they can't fall in love. It doesn't mean they can't learn new things. It just means there's kind of a completeness about them. That's a fascinating thing to be around. It's the same thing with, you know, say somebody has a totally undefined body graph, a reflector. These people, I mean, they can be shocked and feel like, what, there's something wrong with me. Everybody's got all these body graphs that are lit up like Christmas trees and it's so pretty when I look at other people's body graphs, but when I look at mine, it's like, what does that mean? But
I'm a ghost.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a ghost. I'm not even here. But there's a thing about reflectors about being able to read other people's energy really, really well, because in fact, if they're totally open and they're just a walking bucket and they can feel everybody's amplifications, they can sample everything and they can see where things can be taken up a notch. They can really read other people very well energetically. They can see where things can be elevated to a more harmonious level. You know, if things are disharmonious or things like that, they can really see and sample all of that and help other people and be of service in that way. You know, and plus there's so many other elements with human design that you can look at with a reflector that doesn't have anything to do with they're not having any channels. We can look at the substructure of the lines, which is a real fascinating aspect that I've been getting deeply into. It's really fun.
How much does the cross weigh in the incarnation cross in the person's, you know, makeup, or how much does it say about the person?
In human design, they say it makes up about 70% of your genetic expression. Yeah, 70%.
So it's more than the 4 types. So that's like the main thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the places I start. It depends, because every time I do a reading, I ask, how long have you been into this knowledge? You know, how much do you know? Oh, so you do know your profile. And you kind of got to gauge where people are. If they're really advanced and they already know all the profile stuff, I'd be like, okay, let's start talking about other things.
Yes.
But if somebody's just found it yesterday, I got to start from square one.
Yes.
You know? But the incarnation cross is a big part of a person's experience. You could say that there's different ways of looking at it. Of course, there's a language problem because people say a lot of times, I am a generator. I am cross. I am a 6-2 profile. It's like, yeah, you are, but are you those things? Is that what you are? Because when you get into like a lot of the material of these enlightened beings that are on the planet, you're disidentified with form and all these labels that we have. That's your true, eternal, timeless, boundless self, right? The bornless part of you. But human design is funny because it's so tempting to look at it because it's so seductive, and there's all these interesting to be like, I'm this and I am that. Oh my god! And it's so accurate too. So you're like, okay, this is a very form-based knowledge that Ross said is based on the crystals of consciousness. That's what the voice told him that getting them this knowledge. Crystals of consciousness. So there is a form element to it, but there's a little trick. I think that human design is going to be teaching people in the future. When you identify too much with it, it'll put you in a little box that's difficult to get out of. But if you can use it as a tool and kind of like a tool of appreciation, you can appreciate your differentiated experience and be able to just go along for the ride, right? And the cross is a good example because that can be some of the most heavy stuff ever, because the crosses are heavy, you know, squares are heavy. And since it makes up most of your experience, it's easy to say, I am the sufferer. I am the one who's nailed on the cross. I'm the one who's carrying this. But the spiritualization of that is kind of being able to be an observer and disidentifying so much with the suffering heavy aspect of it and kind of spiritualizing it, like it talks about in the Gene Keys, and getting more into the gift, which is just basically a higher frequency. It's more light. You're lightly touching it. It's the same code, but you're not. It doesn't feel like a burden. It's more like an appreciation. Like, oh, it just goes. This is just how it is. And a lot of people experience some amazing transmutations and transformations with getting into Gene Keys. I remember reading Richard saying that people get into the Gene Keys and they understand their incarnation process. Eventually, addictions can just fall away magically. I think addiction can just go away because your higher frequencies are coming into your genetic expression to where what you were using as an addictive thing just kind of doesn't make sense anymore, and it just goes away. That happened to me, actually. I quit drinking after I had an experience with the Gene Keys. After 4 months or so of being into it, something happened. A lot of energy started pouring into me. A lot of anomalous things started happening. I started experiencing energy in my sacral. And I was just like, and this happened for many, many months. Like every minute or every few seconds, sometimes I would get this feeling in my stomach and my sacral that was just like, and it was happening so consistently. On top of that, my frequency was getting so high. It's like, I cannot drink anymore. Literally, I just can't, and I haven't. It's something I just can't do, and that's good because I've been wanting to quit for a long time, and I was always finding it difficult. And but this kind of just went because of the heightened frequency I was bringing into myself. You know, to drink at all, it didn't feel like alcohol anymore. It felt like poison, right? Because my awareness was getting so much more sharp that to dull it down or to make it cloudy, it felt like such a disrespect and a dishonoring of my core self. It did not feel like a fun, good time ever at all anymore. And it's like that with a lot of people. It's fascinating that Richard says, yeah, that's something that can happen to people when they start getting into their Gene Keys.
Wow, that's so fascinating.
Yeah, no, it's really powerful. It's like a laser point precision when you want to look at your cross, right? Yeah. It doesn't mean it's better than astrology. It just means that you can really narrow it down and look at it, because there's a lot of difference between the degrees and the lines of the hexagram. Actually, it's amazing how you can see it, the difference in degrees.
So for here, for instance, what does this mean, the left angle cross of upheaval?
These are
how many crosses are there?
I don't know exactly how many crosses there are.
Many.
Yeah, there's quite a few, but I haven't gotten that. I've memorized quite a bit of it, but there's a lot to memorize with this whole system. But these names of the crosses that Ra came up with, they're basically just descriptive words, and he was quite adept at finding descriptive words for things. That's what he did with the Ray V Ching, where he came up with one word for every line of every hexagram.
Yeah, I think the voice was right to approach somebody who worked in advertising because he would find a good word.
Right. Find a good way to kind of sell it.
Yes.
It works, but even though sometimes you might not agree with it, because sometimes there's false advertising. You know, you watch shampoo commercials and say the shampoo commercials that say it's getting into the molecules of teaching it magically. It's like, I don't think shampoo does that. Same thing with human design. Like sometimes you see things and it's like, I don't know. Say, for example, you're flipping through the Science of Differentiation book and it says something about the second line of the 52nd hexagram or something like this, and it says bigot. That's all it says, bigot. And you're like, and say your son is in that line of that hexagram, and you'd be like, does that mean I'm a bigot? I guess I'm a bigot. There's so much more to understand about yourself. That's why I don't pay attention so much to these words. You know, and the same thing with the incarnation process. There's reasons he came up with those words. You know, left angle cross of upheaval. There's reasons that it's called left angle. You know, that are true. But you know, when you look at things like upheaval, that's an interesting thing. It could have a lot to do with the fact that the design sun Earth, the 3839, is it within the root, within the root center, the 3839, and those are very powerful individual gates. Now, individual channels are mutative. They have a lot to do with being an individual and empowering individuality in other people. And Ernst has that quite a lot in his body graph here, like quite a lot. He's got the 214, the 1057, the 3457, and his sun Earth, his design sun Earth is within the 3839. So this is like powerful individual stuff that is going its own way. It's cutting a path through the jungle.
Yes, exactly.
It can empower other people when they're around it. They're like, well, maybe I can cut a way through a jungle too. I don't have to follow what everybody else is doing in a collective sense. And you know, he's also got the 2838 between the spleen and the root. That's another powerful individual channel that needs to find purpose and meaning for its struggle. And it's basically transmuting struggle into perseverance and being able to persevere and move through things. So having all this individual stuff is really powerful for him. So upheaval, you could say, the patterns that he sees with the 17-18 personality sun Earth, those two placements with the 17 in the ajna and the 18 in the spleen. The 17-18 are both logical gates, and logical gates have to do with patterns, finding patterns, setting patterns, being very good at finding patterns, especially with the 17 because it's in the ajna, which has to do with seeing. So being able to see patterns, organize patterns. This is kind of like logical circuitry, and logical circuitry is also connected to alpha energy, leading, showing a way forward that is shared because it's collective. So him having his sun Earth within the 17-18, it's like showing a pattern, finding a pattern, being able to set the pattern. But the upheaval part of all this could very much come from the 3839, which is so individual that it's like disrupting patterns. Like, no, it doesn't have to be like this. We'll set our own pattern. We'll go our own course, and then kind of like charting your own course that way. That might seem theoretical.
It does, you know. I'm just going to say that, you know, this teacher, he didn't like the translation of some ancient text, so he decided to translate himself, and he uses a different system of astrology that he's being called a heretic by the traditional astrologers in this system. He gets so much hate.
Yeah. So he's causing some upheaval.
Yes.
And when you look at that and you combine it with, this is what's fun about human design. You take it all together. Like, left angle cross of upheaval. He also has the 214 between the G center and the sacral, charting his own course, affecting direction in other people. 1057 in having passion with his own creations. The 3410 being very centered within himself. That's a very much, that 3410 is a funny thing. Like, they're just so centered within themselves and they wish other people would be too. The 3457, lots of juice for work. That 1858 is a funny one between the spleen and the root. The 1858 channel of judgment, which is collective. That channel is an interesting one because the reason it's called the channel of judgment is it's logical, which means it's finding patterns, but it's judging patterns as well. It wishes that there would just be a smooth running operation without there being interruptions in the pattern being set. That's why it's called judgment. People with that channel are quick to judge, quote unquote. But at the higher frequencies, when you learn with the gene keys, it's more about integrity. You want to test the integrity of things because you want things to be able to hold up. It's sort of like if somebody's building a bridge. You want it to be able to hold the weight of the cars that are going across it, but it has to have integrity in its structure. Things have to be balanced just right. And for people with an 1858, they're concerned with it. They're very concerned with the structure. Is it going to hold? They're testing integrity.
He's very concerned with testing. He does so much testing before putting something out, like really.
Yeah, it's really important because they want it to float, you know. That's really important.
So interesting. How many things? So I was curious, I'm going to stop sharing this image. I was curious how you integrate this human design knowledge in your everyday life. Because I saw some people say, like, if you're a manifestor, you should eat like this, or if you're like this, you should sleep like this.
There's lots of rules and codes of behavior that need to be followed. Otherwise, you're not self and all this. I just don't even go there. I don't go there with people. And in terms of every day, I see it as contemplation. Because I don't think awareness all by itself is given as much credit as it truly deserves. You know, when you're aware, when you're simply aware of things, all kinds of things can start shifting. All kinds of things. Sort of gets in line with the law of attraction stuff. You know, when your consciousness changes, your reality begins to change. And was my experience. I guess you could say I'm lucky because I found the Gene Keys first, which is all about that. You know, changing your perspective. Next thing you know, the world changes. So with human design, that's kind of how I operate with it too. It's a contemplation exercise. There are certain things you can do to where, you know, it's all about looking in the mirror. It's like a mirror. You know, when you look at it, it's like, well, this is me. Now I can just be unapologetically me, and I can just be that. But it doesn't mean you have to like work really hard to be you, and that there needs to be a really strict thing that you need to do in order to be you. A lot of what I see human design people complain about in terms of where you're at and where you want to be with being strict with human design, they're just basically talking about the human condition. And if they have it, and if they want to pretend they don't have it, and that they're uninfected and everybody else is a zombie, that's so false, and it's really arrogant, and to assume that you're somehow elevated above everybody else because you've been experimenting with strategy and authority, and your life is somehow better or more exalted or something more powerful and meaningful than other people. That is so just flat out arrogant. I just don't even go there. I don't even assume that about people. You're unevolved, and I'm evolved. You're a 7-centered being, and I'm a 9-centered exalted human design being. I note that, and it's just something that needs to be said. You know, a lot of people who get into human design, they haven't studied very much of other things.
Yes. And
human design can seem like the ultimate cheat sheet. Like, oh, it's all right here. I don't need to learn about signs and elements and cards and psychology and this. They don't even have much work to show for other things. But suddenly they get human design, and suddenly it blows their mind. I mean, it is mind blowing. You got to give them that. It's amazing. It's accurate. It's fascinating. But if they have nothing else that they've worked on in order to correlate it to other things, then it will put you in a very narrow place because it's just the power of it. It is a very, very powerful thing. If you give this to somebody who hasn't had much experience with other things, even if they have, it seems kind of like superficial experience because I've seen people talk like they just throw everything away. You know, before human design, I tried tarot, I tried astrology, and nothing worked for me. It's like, well, I don't think you looked into it deeply enough.
Yeah, you can integrate.
Yeah, I mean, I've been helped immensely with astrology because you have to. It's a discipline. You have to apply yourself. You don't just like get a cheap reading online and be like, oh, I'm a Scorpio, and that doesn't do anything for me. It's like, no. There's been compendiums written about this, and you got to like, and there's so much to it that can help understanding transits. But I know that it can seem like a totally different language, and it can seem complicated. You know, you look at an astrology chart, it's hard to understand what all these mean for you individually. But when you look at human design, it's so black and white. So right there in your face. There's not much need for interpretation. But there is, you know, you have, like I talked about in the circuitry video, it's so important to take everything together and to put it all together. And it's not that hard. You know, it might be hard in terms of the memorization and trying to learn everything. But we're all here to help each other and support each other. You know, when you look at my body graph, I'm expressing myself in the way that I am, and it's all perfectly in line with my body graph. And I could share that and empower people in the way that I am with my definitions. You can do the same thing being a manifestor. You could get things going and initiate things with other people. You know, you contacted me for this. I'm like, yes, let's go. And that's kind of a manifestor thing. Like, let's do this, boom. And that's cool. I'm not really like that, but it's cool to have a manifestor who is like that, who can just pick it up and run with it, you know, without having to wait and see how they feel first or something. And that's cool. I like that. And I think human design is here to help humanity come into progressively more and more alignment in that way, in terms of understanding each other, working with each other. I mean, one of the most powerful things I've seen with human design is understanding family dynamics and relationships.
Compatibility, yeah.
Yeah. Like you could look at, if you've had problems with your family, suddenly you look at everybody's body graph and it's like, that's why. I don't even take it personally. They're just like that. And that's how they are. You know? And it's the same thing with you, you know? And you can see why you're different, why some people might have had an issue with you. Why you always got to be like that? Why you like this? It's like, well, I have a 3-5 profile. I got this and I got that. And that's kind of how it is, you know? You can really see it. Some people with a lot of collective gates or collective circuitry, they might feel kind of put off by all this individual stuff. Somebody like me with a lot of individual things going on, they might be like, why don't you just conform? Why you got to be such a rebel? And it's just how it is. I mean, I can't. I can't conform. I don't think I could conform if I tried. So when you understand, it makes everything so much easier. You don't take things personally. It's not that I have character defects necessarily, even though, yeah, you want to work on yourself and better understand and heal and all that, which is it's a big theme of the time we're moving through right now, is healing as much as we can because of the transition we're moving through.
Yes.
I think human design can help with that, absolutely, if we see it in a holistic way and not be as judgmental and rigid and strict with it. Yeah.
I was curious if in human design twins have the same charts.
Actually, Rod talked about this when he started introducing the substructures of the lines. After like, I think it was like after 12 or 13, somewhere around there, years of teaching human design, he came out and told someone that there was more. There were substructures, the lines of the hexagram that you needed to teach, and they were just like, excuse me, there's more? There's more? He's like, yeah, there's within each line of a hexagram. Within each line of a hexagram, you have 6 colors. Within each color, you have 6 tones, and within each tone, you have 5 bases. And that's a lot of information. And he started unpacking this in his PHS courses. which I went through over and
Did you
over.
hear
And I
that?
shared some of it just because I want people to have an understanding of what's going on with it. Yeah, that's a powerful aspect of the knowledge. I forgot what your original question was about it.
If twins have identical charts.
Yeah, that's why. Because with a line of a hexagram, that's about 18 hours of arc.
Yes.
18 hours. When you get to colors, color is about like a couple hours. When you get to tone, that's like 15 minutes. But when you get to the base, that's minutes.
Yes.
And the difference is if one baby comes out and another one comes out like 5 minutes later, you might think that they're born at the same time. But when you look at this level of human design with base and even tone, you can see differences. You can see it between the people. And if I had them in front of me, I would be able to explain it to you.
Yeah.
But correct birth time would really be necessary.
That's so interesting because in Vedic astrology, we also have these divisional charts, like we split the sign in several divisions, and the most accurate is like the 60th divisional chart, so we split it in 60. So the birth time has to be like super accurate, like really to the minute. Let's go beyond human design a little bit. And you reference Krishnamurti in many of your videos. So how did you come to know the teachings of Krishnamurti?
UG Krishnamurti, right? Because there's also J Krishnamurti, and people sometimes think they're related, but they're not related. I admire and appreciate J Krishnamurti. I haven't gotten deeply into his work so much, but I've watched some videos and I like what he has to say and all that. But UG Krishnamurti is a whole other phenomenon, a whole other animal, you could say, because he is an animal. And that's what's fascinating about him. I found out about UG Krishnamurti like years and years ago, like 10 years ago or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I found his writings to be really fascinating because he's talking about things from an enlightened point of view, but he's less nice about it. He's more upfront about it. And he's more of he can be a kind person. He's sort of funny. He can oscillate between being very kind and then just like, throwing things like upside down. Sometimes like it just depends on the person. And like, I just like reading what he had to say about how our minds work and how we basically live in a mental matrix that is pretty much hopeless. He doesn't mince words. He's like, you're in a hopeless situation, and there is no way out. So what you want me to do some magic on you? Like kind of like, and I like how he just kind of gets into that, how it happens and how it happened for him. I like reading about his relentless search for self, right, and meaning with self. And I talk about that in my Circuitry and Beyond video. This relentless search. He just kept searching and searching and searching until poof, nothing. Like, and he said it almost killed him. His body kind of imploded. He said it felt like miniature atomic bombs going off in his whole being, like that it was destroying everything, every pattern of self, every identification with self, every pattern of identification with all these patterns of ways of thinking, being, and living that are about finding myself, wanting enlightenment, what's the meaning of life, wanting to find meaning in things, and all of that. Just now, different people come to that in different ways. They might come to that in different ways. I just the other day looked at how Muji had his awakening, listening to his story. I like his story. It's really interesting how it just kind of happened. And he went to see Papaji, and he said Papaji murdered him. He's like, he just murdered me, and he was really upset. And then something happened the next day where he just disappeared. His self disappeared, but at the same time he's still here. That's the kind of paradox. And that's kind of what happened to Yuji. He disappeared. There's no Yuji anywhere. There is no self. There's no self to realize. There is no enlightenment. But here you are, and fully, aware and experiencing the world, and the senses are operating in a really powerful way. I just think Yuji is an interesting case study of a kind of mutation that is going to be coming more and more to people in different ways. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I really feel that that's on the horizon. I mean, I think it's actually happening. I'm having anomalous experiences. Other people are having interesting, strange experiences that seem to come out of nowhere, and that seem to have nothing to do with anything I do, and that seem to have nothing to do with my ego, you could say. Like, even though you could say it's connected, but I don't know.
Speaking about the profound experiences, you mentioned in some videos that you had some profound experience, but it's like it's difficult to talk about them because you can't really describe with words. Mm-hmm. It happened to me also when I met an avatar, Mother Mira, and it's like when also I had the need not to talk, and people were asking, so how did you feel? Well, it's like you're not doing justice to the event by describing it.
Right, describing it. Oh, let me tell you. First, there was the sensation.
Yes,
of infinite love and peace and joy and connection, but even those words felt it.
Yes.
But what I felt that before. I've been like really quiet for a long time, and somebody might be like, is there something wrong with you?
Yes, are you okay? But yes, I don't.
It's like, what do I say? I'm just like, I'm feeling profound love and peace coming into me, and I don't know. Well, part of it is I didn't want to ruin it. I didn't want to I figured if I start talking about it, that's going to somehow destroy it. It's just like in tarot, the swords. When people have that little prayer they say before they do a tarot reading, with the wand createth thee, with the cup sustaineth thee, with the sword destroyeth thee, with the coin redeemeth thee. So when you look at swords or you look at air signs, astrology, there's a way of separating, with our minds. That's what it's always about. Like, you're going to see contrast. You're going to separate this from that. And that's a useful thing in life. You don't want to eat soup with a fork because it's not going to work. So there is this element of reality that's totally necessary. But when you're talking about spiritual reality, forks and spoons don't amount to much, with that part of our mind that needs to differentiate between this and that. It's really difficult to talk about it, and to even try attacking it with the mind feels like it's a dishonoring of it.
Exactly, dishonoring. So I'm not going to ask you like how you felt, but what were the circumstances when you had these, these experiences?
Well, a big part of it has to do with getting out of transference in human design, actually. And I was also doing shamanic healing at the time. A lot of shamanic sessions with very seasoned practitioners who were helping me clear my energy, helping me heal old wounds from my past and from childhood, and even things that might currently be around me with energies, entities, forces, beings, all kinds of stuff like that. You could think of it as patterns. You could think of it as just psychosomatic patterns, or you could think of them as totally separate entities. I'm not here to argue which. I'm just saying that there's something. And when you remove these things and you start to heal on that level, boy, is it an amazing thing. But I was doing that alongside with understanding transference in human design, which has to do with the substructures of the design center. I just made a course about it, a 3.5-hour course that I did a video about on my YouTube channel. And that's basically what happened. I got snapped out of transference really fast, really powerfully, suddenly. But I tell people in the video that it's a progressive thing, and it has to do with awareness, really. When you're aware, that's number one. Contemplation and being aware of what kind of transference you may be in with your substructures and how all that works. I kind of get into it a little bit in the video. I've done certain other videos about it, but it is a really big deal. I don't like freaking people out about it, but it is a big deal. I think transference is a big deal. I was in very deep transference, and when I got out of it, it was like, that's when I started experiencing these powerful surges of energy. It's kind of like, sort of like what happened with the gene keys, but different. Gene keys in a way is kind of surface level because you're looking at the hexagram itself on the surface, but when you look at the substructures of the hexagram and are getting into the colors and tones, boy, that's some powerful stuff. Because
ding dong 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 ding dong.
The middle world where it's really tense. The middle world is where we're at now.
Hit the golden bell, bitch.
But when you look at the substructure of the lines in human design, it's sort of like the density of this world. You can call it like a homogenized field. It's sort of like about the morphogenetic field that Rupert Sheldrake talks about. It's almost like there's a pressure within it concerning humanity to conform. You could call it the ego program. That we've been in the ego program for a while. And the ego is really funny because it thinks it's so different when it just makes everything the same. And it leads to a lot of defensiveness and a lot of uncertainty, and it can kill appreciation for your own life, like your own life. And getting out of transference puts you in alignment. That's what it does. When you understand your colors and your tones and your left-right fixing on those substructural levels, especially with the design center, if it's like over time, it's a thing, and that's what happened to me. And it just led to a lot of experiences.
So it's more a confluence of circumstances and things you were into.
Right, yeah. And I think it's like that with people, because I could be like, well, in order to get out of transference, you got to hire this shaman and have them do sessions on you every day for a few months, and then, but that's how it was for me. And I can't say that's how it's going to be for everyone, but that's why I focus mostly on awareness itself. When you're aware of what's going on and you're aware of certain addictive patterns that can take place with the substructures, that's what the course is all about. Noticing what those addictive patterns are, what's good for you and what isn't good for you, what's in alignment with you, what isn't in alignment with you, and how you might be habitually doing the thing that is out of alignment with you. We see a lot of that with color. It can happen quite a bit depending on the person. Some people are way deep in it, like I was. Some people might not be so deep. But when you come to appreciate your native cognition and how you're really functioning on that level, a lot of things can happen. Powerful things that can put you in alignment. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Matt. Thank you for your time for this very extensive interview where you shared a bit on the human design and also your personal experiences with mixing your various sources of knowledge. I'm going to link down below Matt's YouTube channel, his website, erotica.net, and also the video that we reference, Circuitry and Beyond. So do you have any upcoming projects or anything?
Well, right now I'm in Tenerife, and we're hosting retreats for people where we're combining human design and Anthony William, the medical mediums material, to help people come into as much alignment as they can with this transition, because it's no joke. We don't want to lie to people and say everything's fine and dandy. Chronic illness is on the rise, and it's going to be getting much worse in the next 20 years. So what we're trying to do is head it off and get people aware of that it doesn't need to be as bad, because the storm is coming. It's here, and it's going to get churning, but we don't have to identify with it so much. There are ways of coming into alignment. There's things we can do to lessen the suffering and have more compassion and know what's really going on with our health, with our life, with our purpose. And that's what our retreat's about. And we're doing that for people right now. I'm working on a human design video that may be out in a few months that's focusing on creation, sexual energy, and manifestation and intention. It's taken me, again, about 1.5 years putting all of this together. So it's quite a powerful thing, and I'm letting it come in its own time, like in that sacral generator way. It's
God,
got,
I noticed that with generators, and for me as a manifestor, it's a bit annoying. Like, why does it take you so long?
it's just how it is. Like I might find a piece of information tomorrow that is just the right piece of information I needed. And it's like, well, it's a good thing I waited 7 months because I needed this. I needed this right now. And then boom, and it'll happen.
Yes,
It'll happen.
looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you again. I'll see you guys soon with more videos. Make sure to check out Matt's website and YouTube channel. This has been Carmina. See you soon. Bye.
That was the end of it? Really? Holy shit. Sorry about that. I'm recording this, aren't I? I can't find the button. Fuck, bitch. What?